Hey everyone, Representative Evan Goige here with an update for you Nerd Power Forward-Thinking Wisconsin followers. This is about the single most important budget item that's about to be debated in Madison, and that is whether Wisconsin should expand BadgerCare, our program that's called at the federal level called Medicaid. Now, Forward-Thinking Wisconsin, we've covered the history of Medicaid in Wisconsin and BadgerCare in previous episodes. If you want way more background than you're ever going to need, we recommend that you take a listen to those podcast episodes. But this is really about the mechanics of how BadgerCare expansion works right now in Wisconsin. And I want to walk through how BadgerCare expansion works, the mechanics, and why it's such a good idea for Wisconsin. First, Medicaid BadgerCare covers over 1 million people in the state of Wisconsin, from the very young to the very old and everywhere in between. The program we're talking about now, the population that we're talking about under expansion is narrow. We're talking about childless adults, individuals between the age of 18 and 64 that don't have kids. Childless adults. Now, this is a fairly large population, and under current law, we cover childless adults up to 100% of the federal poverty guidelines. That means an individual that's working, making just under $13,000 a year or less is eligible for BadgerCare. Okay, that's a lot of people, and this is a blended payment program. For our current law, for people making just less than $13,000 a year, the federal government will pay 60% of those costs, and the state, through our general purpose revenue, will pay 40% of the costs. We call this FMAP, and that's really important in this debate because the federal government will pay a higher percentage if we expand who is eligible. So under expansion, if we increase just to 138% of the federal poverty guidelines for childless adults, or people making just under $17,750 a year, so still living in poverty but making a little bit more, the working poor. Look at this chart, poorly drawn as it is. If we expand, the federal government's share will move from 60% of the cost to 90% of the cost. Now follow the other piece of pie. The state's portion will be reduced from 40% to 10%. Now, this is a huge amount of money because a lot of people are covered by this program. So the reduction in state's share will amount to $635 million in the next 2 years just through expansion. This is huge. So obviously, we should do this. We're going to cover about 90,000 additional people. You can imagine if you're making $16,000 or $17,000 a year, it's really hard to afford insurance and to afford co-pays or deductibles if you use that insurance. So the state covers more people with insurance, and we save a ton of money. Now, we've been making this argument, we Democrats in Madison have been making this argument for years, and we've left a lot of federal money on the table from our past failures of expanding BadgerCare. But the plot just got thicker. In Washington, D.C., just this week, the federal Congress has passed a bill that provides one-time cash incentives for states to expand their Medicaid programs. There are 38 states and the District of Columbia that have already done this. They're ahead of us. 12 states left, and we're one of those 12. Now, if Wisconsin expands BadgerCare right now, we will get $635 million in savings in the next 2 years. But on top of that, the federal government's overall share of the entire Medicaid population is going to go up, and the state is going to receive, this is the worst prop I've ever used in the history of forward-thinking Wisconsin, the state will receive $1 billion in general purpose revenue savings.
Why make trillions when we could make billions?
Because the federal government is paying a larger share of BadgerCare expenses. So put it all together. $1 billion over the next 2 years, only if we take advantage of expansion right now, plus $635 million in savings from the childless adults savings that we just discussed. Put that together, it's almost $1.7 billion in saved general purpose revenue that the state would have available to invest in schools, roads. We could put it in the bank. We could reduce taxes. That's the kind of debate. We can have a wonderful debate in Madison about what to do with $1.7 billion, but only possible if BadgerCare expansion happens and happens now.